Got a really crazy cat going nuts here, so it may be flying over my head. I'm going to continue reading, and the next part says, My approach to consciousness. It's not my approach, it's the title of the book. This Dr. Wolf's approach to consciousness that resulted in my holodynamic view is what I consider inclusive. It includes all particle and wave information within the holodynamic field. This means each field of study concerning consciousness was of interest to me. My approach has been to explore each reasonable finding about consciousness, to study what is known, seek some reasonable theory that puts it all together, and then put everything through the pragmatic test. Over the years, I have researched every facet of what might even be remotely associated with consciousness, and as a result, I became intimately familiar with each branch of human knowledge. That's why I think this guy deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for, the level of study this guy had to do to study every different field. This is usually you spend a lifetime learning one field. So for this guy to learn every one in one lifetime, he's a freaking genius. As fortunate to have begun my formal education in physics, chemistry, and pre-medicine, this gave me a background of understanding the basics of the classical approach to physical reality so I could grasp the developmental mechanisms and sequential orders of molecule biology. My additional training as an educator prepared me to understand the fundamental processes by which students learn and how everything from linguistics to mathematics has sequential hierarchies inherent within the learning process, processes that might reflect more accurately how students learn and how consciousness develops. I switched from teaching science to teaching religion and obtained a master's degree in religion education. My advanced training exposed me to the world of religions and gave me the basic familiarities with most Eastern and Western philosophies. I became fascinated with cultural dissipative orders and the multiple millennial anthropological patterns from which the various religions emerged. I became intimately familiar with not only the beliefs of each religion, but also with their unique contributions to the development of the collective consciousness of humanity. So, I'm really odd when people say that this is New Age, because it's like, okay, to be New Age is to study religion. So religious people that would be against this stuff, you do realize you're against the teacher of religion, because this guy is actually not only studied religion, but taught religion, and can see major flaws within all religions. So I find that really, really odd that religious people would be against this, because he taught religion. I became an instructor in a private religious universe, Brigham Young University, and began to explore and teach the integrative aspects between science and religion. What a mix. From quantum physics, I learned the implicit order, Bohm, 1980, that reflects itself throughout physical reality. I began to search for reflections of this built-in order in the emergence of consciousness. With my religious background, I was particularly interested in how the implicit order might be related to processes like salvation and enlightenment. Finding the implicit order of consciousness became almost a consuming passion. Over a period of several years, I hired researchers to bring me everything known on the subject. I began an extensive comparison of every theory of development, whether in education, religion, philosophy, or from any related subjects such as anthropology, psychology, biology, physics, or mathematics. To further my research, I chose developmental psychology as my doctorate program. I specialized in marriage and family therapy so I could experience in more depth the developmental orders of consciousness in family systems. I wanted to know in detail what might block the natural development of consciousness and how family and cultural dynamics influence its patterns. At each stage of my own learning, my focus was not just on the theory of conscious development, but on how the theory could be used to solve the problems people were experiencing within themselves and within their communities. As I look back on these early years of my own development, I can see how I became the observer and the participant in the unfolding of my own consciousness. I began to experience myself as part of the larger field of consciousness. I was drawn to certain branches of science. Information theory, for example, suggested that self-organization begins at the micro level and progresses to the macro. If the small parts don't work, the whole breaks down. The realization that any theory must create predictable results at the individual level before being applied to the collective. This became a guiding principle as I worked my way through the ocean of theoretical and foundication about consciousness, mind, intelligence, and spiritual phenomena. The material versus mental duality that appeared at the root of most philosophical polarizations led me into networks of overlapping concepts. As I sought to unravel the conceptual networks, I began to look for a way to filter out any variables about what worked and what didn't work, and to question everything. Was there an implicit order from which the schools of thought emerged? Which component has subcomponents? Are there hierarchies of structure and function? Are there information patterns that occurred when working the information down from biological basis into the molecular, atomic, and quantum subcomponents? What possible mathematical relationships are evident in hierarchies? What mathematical probabilities are invoked? Could Brown's law of form apply to human consciousness? Can scientific approach provide the foundations for a physical model of consciousness? What schemata might be constructed to integrate the findings? In parallel studies, I also understood that consciousness has complex, self-organizing, experimental, and nonlinear aspects. These aspects of consciousness can be validated by consensus. Experience from one mode can be compared with that of another. A child gurgles and points until the parent says the name of the object. This is repeating until the child gets the name that everyone uses to identify the object. This upward and outward validation process is quite different from the inward and downward scientific approach. Does it emulate a different dimension of consciousness? Einstein enunciated his special and general theories of relativity through the upward and outward processes. He developed such a complete association with light until, as he reports in his private journal, he became one with a wave of light. He had so in communication with light that he asked the wave for the structural information regarding the relationship between the wave's mass and velocity. The wave explained the relationship to him, and from that information Einstein deduced his theories. His genius was in explaining it to his colleagues. That's like where I see genius and insanity is like you can be a friggin' genius, but if you can't explain what it is you see, what's the point of knowing it? You will look insane if you can't explain what others can't see. You may be a complete genius, but if others can't understand you, you will look totally insane. So that is like you have to go from, a dimension that's higher than what anybody else can comprehend, and it's like you can't stay there. You've got to come down to a level where everybody else So it's like you're coming in and out of different dimensions. It is the wildest trip. That's where I had to kind of learn how to communicate. That's why I started this whole channel, is I had to improve on my communication skills. Never had a problem communicating, but communicating the topic of discussion that I want to discuss has been the ultimate challenge. In a similar process, Joan Stock discovered the polio vaccine. Salks writes that he became so familiar with the human immune system and the polio virus that he reportedly became both the object and the subject at one and the same time. In this altered state, he discovered the true meaning of communication, from which emerged the polio vaccine. Great intuitive insights came from outward and upward exploration. Like a hot iron melting through ice, I looked for results. The demand for results cut away the immobilizing endlessness of words and helping me separate what works from what is only talk. I came to understand the downward hierarchies of analysis with so many of their subcomponents that made up the physical view of reality. I also better understood the upward hierarchies of experimental exploration and the cause-effect relationships among components that could be validated only by consensus and made up our mental view of reality. This duality became physical and mental, was inherent in most human conflicts, but it proved to be contained within its own information system. Other dualities, just as common, can be seen controlling consciousness at every level of society. Linear and wave dynamics can be seen as inherent in all such dualities. The concept of an implicit order suggests that perhaps the solution to such dualities might be bigger than its polarized parts. Polarized dualities are often to be incomplete in and of themselves. In all such cases, a broader, more inclusive state of consciousness could be found waiting to emerge from the implicit order. What forces could possibly be at work holding dualities in place, giving them such power, maintaining their form, and spreading their influence? As a marriage and family therapist, I was thrust firsthand into the daily conflicts between the ethical orientations, myths, taboos, beliefs, intentionalities, and perceptions of family dynamics. As a pragmatic, I developed certain processes for solving the problems of my clients. These processes were sensibly successful in short term and have been outlined in detail in other writings, Wolf 1990. Out of this combination of research, induction, deduction, and testing gradually emerged a holodynamic model of consciousness. It emerged in a way I never would have predicted. As I look back upon it now, I can see that at one point the information I had gathered self-organized within my own network of information systems. It revealed a hidden dimension of consciousness, a hitherto enfolded dimensions of consciousness I had not realized. In turn, it turned out to be a new level of consciousness about consciousness. Before this point in time, I had spent several years constructing comparison grids that identified the similarities among various schools of thought about the development of consciousness. In my basket, so to speak, I had collected most of the information from modern science, and I had also assimilated the basis of most proponent thinking from philosophy and psychology, religion, and education. I was attempting to correlate these findings, but put them on a chart and then compare them with the implications of quantum physics, superfluidity, information theory, and holographics. I'll continue reading. I hope it'll show it, but he did one day, just woke up and like had this massive idea. It's like, you know, when you get this light bulb that hits you, it's like you think you just got a good idea, but no, that good idea took a long time for you to create. You had to gather a whole pile of information And then one day, just all the pieces of the puzzle come together and poof, you got a good idea. Peace out.